Hello, Christopher.
Hello, Csaba. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you doing?
Thank you very much.
Back from Vin, Italy, as I
Back
heard.
from Italy, exactly 5 days of intense meeting, drinking, testing,
Tasting.
I should say. But
You
even
didn't drink
at night,
anything.
at night over dinner, you have a glass of wine or two and some really good food, good people, great weather. I mean, till you come back from those kind of events more exhausted than when you left, even though it's over the weekend. So Italy starts usually on the Sunday
Yeah.
to the Wednesday, falls always around Easter, and basically it's a massive show. It's massive. I mean, I've rarely seen anything that big as any given building. It's its own region of Italy. So from Piedmont to Tuscany, you should just imagine the size of the thing. Alto Adige, and then Friuli, and then Campania, and then Basilicata, and so on and so forth. Sicily. So you
Did they let the Sicilians in as well? Sorry.
keep on walking from A to B to C to D. It's huge. I think one of the record on the day, like it's 15,000 feet, steps. As that's all you do basically. You walk. You come to the kind of stand of that winery that you have an appointment with. You get in, it's packed. You have to think it's packed. Of people trying to get in, people testing the wines. And so you've got an appointment, you go to the back room, you sit down, and then they give you a bit of food, they give you some water, and then they say, okay, let's go. And then you test 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 wines. Sometimes that's depend of the time you have and what they do represent. You take your note, blah, blah, you ask a few questions, and then and you time yourself because you really don't have much time. And then thank you very much, lovely. And then you do that again and again and again and again and again. I think over the last, so I was there Sunday all day, Monday all day, Tuesday all day, and Wednesday morning. I think I might have tested something like 400 wines. It was very intense. It was very, 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 very intense. Quick lunch, obviously, because you don't have much time to spend on that. Good food though, and then you back on it, bam, 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 bam. Then so basically you start at 9:30 in the morning. Yes, 9:30 in the morning. Trust me, it hurts. And then by sort of 5 you're out and you're exhausted, to be honest. And then you go out for dinner.
Yes.
I'm not complaining, please.
Yes.
Don't take that angle. I am not complaining, even though if you realize I'm losing my voice a bit. I don't know where it comes from. Probably got a bit of a wind.
I suppose it could be a worse work day, right? Yeah.
I don't know, Zeb. Like, look, that's the beauty of what I do. But it's true that it's my colleague are looking at me. Oh, you enjoyed Italy? No, I didn't enjoy Italy. So I wasn't on holiday. It wasn't a break from work. I've actually had a different rhythm, a different ways, but the topic is the same, and the intensity is even more. As it's very it's very very focused.
You enjoyed Vin, Italy. That's
I did a lot. I did a lot. It was a really good tribe of people. I was in a group. We have 6 of us, very good group of people, good testers and different business orientation. So so the wines are the wines, but then you see, well, I could do with that because of this. I could do with that because of that. For example, we went to Franciacorta's, so the sparkling wine of Italy, and everybody's like, oh, the wines are good, and I'm like, yes, but what do you want me to do with them? I don't have an angle. I don't have an angle to sell Franciacorta for my work because champagne takes over. And even though it's within, I could offer it, but I don't have the Italian section. I don't have the Italian orientation as to serve wine like this. And I'd rather support the UK sparkling wine business, to be honest. Because
I was going to actually mention that I imagine champagne is obviously huge. But Italian English sparkling wine is going to be, even that takes over easily.
Champagne is not 5% of what we list, but we have that 5%, and this 5% is our English. And so it's thriving. The wines are fantastic. We always have a sparkling wine by the glass. as a support, but also because the wines really speak for themselves. At this price tag, where do you sit? What do you want to do? So talking about price tag, I think this is where we're heading today.
Exactly, it is where we're heading today. Let's chat a little bit about what is the difference between a £10 bottle of wine and a £100 bottle of wine, because I think people obviously know the difference. You pay 10 times more for one or 10 times less for the other, but essentially it's a little bit more complicated than that, because it's a lot of angles, a lot of elements which can make a bottle of wine £10 and the other is £100. It's not always just the juice what's in it. In fact, it's never only the juice what's in it.
No, but I mean it goes very far, to be honest. But sort of, if you really take the basics, I think this one, sparkling wine, is a very, very good example to start with, as even though the production of English sparkling wine is I wouldn't say secular, but not far away from it. The land cost has exploded. It's a small island, as we all know. So if you even started 20 years ago, you paid a very decent amount of money for the land that you purchased. If you started 5 years ago, it's even more. And obviously those sites are now prime sites, so you pay even more if they are on sales. And then you have all the work that goes with it, because unless you buy a vineyard, you buy a piece of land. So you have to cultivate it, so you have to plow it, you have to plant your vine. A vine is £1. One. So you imagine the density usually in the UK is about 8,000 vine per square meter per hectare. So already it's £8,000 investment plus the land, obviously.
But
Plus,
you only have 1 hectare then.
and you can't work with 1 hectare, so you're going to work minimum with 5 or 6 or 7, or so you multiply by that plus the land itself, so whatever is the square meter value, and then it has one vine, but you have all the trellising and so on and so forth. So it's a fortune to start with, and then you need all the materials, so you need the tools, the tractors, and so on and so forth. Then you need a workforce, then you need to bring the winery. So a stainless steel vat is up to £150,000. And you probably
Again, you don't just need one, you need a few.
Precisely, you need a press. A press is about £100,000. You need this and you need that, and you need some barrels, and you need an enologist and a winemaker, and those guys are 40, 50, 60, 100 grand a year. And by law, you don't make your wine and you sell it the day after or the year after. First of all, you have to make the wine, and then as a sparkling wine, you need to do the second fermentation in the bottle, which takes another 3 or 4 months, and then you have to age it for a minimum of 3 years. So even if you started from zero, there is no entry of money as such, nothing for at least 5 years.
Exactly.
So you need to start with a very decent amount of money, if not huge even.
And even if you have wine to sell in 5 years, you still have to market it, because if you don't do any marketing with it, nobody's going to buy your wine, obviously.
Exactly. Even if you can sell in 5 years, how much are you going to sell on the first year, and where are you going to sell it, and what's going to be your price tag? But your price tag will be a slight fraction of the amount of money you invested. Obviously, when you do that investment as a future for your own kids or whatever, you look at the large scale. You're thinking, I'm not going to make my money back in 10 years. It's going to be probably 30 or 40 or 50 years. The next generation, even the next generation after that, will benefit. That's the beauty of Champagne. Champagne is 300 years old.
Yeah.
So the land is the value, but most of the people that now coming into the Champagne world as winemaker, as owner, as brands, the land is obviously coming from the parents or the grandparents.
Yeah.
Rarely people just arrive in Champagne, buy land, because the land in Champagne is...
You actually buy land in Champagne, because Champagne is restricted by territory.
It's 33,000 hectares.
Nobody's selling, obviously.
But more importantly, no people sells, because nobody. I mean, if you could buy, a Grand Cru Champagne of a decent character is 1 to 1.2 million euros.
Mhm. Yeah.
1.2 million euros.
Yeah.
So again, put that in a version where you're going to sell your wine at 40, 35, 40 euros a bottle.
Yeah.
Given that you produce probably about it's 3,000 kilos per hectare, 4, 5. So that's going to be 2,000 liters, 2,205 by 5, so 5,000, 6,000 bottles.
Mm.
So I mean, you see where I'm going. It's the investment is really on the long term, and it makes less and less sense to actually buy land because it's just so expensive, and you need so much cash as to do so. Even though you're thinking about again the next generation, and the same thing in Burgundy, same thing in Bordeaux, same thing in general in Europe. I was talking to people that in Italy, the cost of Barolo land now, when they say, oh, my father, my grandfather bought that vineyard 20 years ago, and you're like, my goodness, he did such a great investment, because today you're ripping up the value of that, because they say, yeah, as today buying land in Barolo or in Barbasco it's a nightmare. Quality wise, it's a nightmare to find really good vineyard on sales. They're not really on sales, and if they are on sales, you have to take massive loans, even though you're big companies, even though you got bank support and so on. It's just so much money. So coming back to the 10 to the 100, that's one of the aspects. Where did you start? When did you start? Where is the land coming from? Then that's what you're producing. Obviously, if you work with a productive grape variety such as like Picpoul de Pinet, for example, and you can yield quite easily, and vintage on vintages usually it's quite generous and you can produce. Of course, your wines will be around the 5-6 pound value on the British market, but your costs are actually quite low. Why? Because the land is not that expensive. As I said, it's usually quite secular, or at least you inherited the vineyard from your father or your grandfather, or it always existed but it's sold to a cooperative and you decided now to bottle up. So there is a land value that is not really part of that bottle. So the cost of the juice itself, the production of the juice, again, if you're in Picpoul, usually it's mechanized. So you need to have a tractor, a driver, and probably a mechanic that works on the estate. But usually the mechanic is also doing something else. It's not one-man task, you know what I mean? So your cost in general per liter will be quite low.
Yeah.
Then it's the incompressible cost. So value of bottles, we see that as marginal, but over the since COVID, the price of bottles, since the Ukrainian crisis as well, because most of the bottles were made also in Ukraine and around it, the price of bottle have risen by 30 to 40%. And you have the labeling. Labeling works as you have to order about 3,000 labels as to get the best price and to get the production. And again, it comes up to about 10 to 12. But again, the value of paper has increased because for the same reason. Then you got the cork value or screw cap value. Same thing, doesn't stop going up. Then at the moment, we're talking about the energy pricing. Energy and water pricing. There's a staggering number that I'm very sorry I'm going to have to tell you, but when I've learned that a couple of weeks ago, I was really taken by surprise. I did a vintage about 10, 15 years ago now. I did a vintage in a sweet wine region of Austria, and I was talking with the winemaker at the time, and he was saying, roughly we consume a liter of water to produce a liter of wine.
Yeah.
Has to clean, has to maintain everything, because the European laws are very strict in cleanliness, and also you work with a living environment, so you don't want deviation on your yeast and so on and so forth. So everything is really kept immaculate when it comes to cleanliness. You can almost eat on the ground that as much. The European law states 5.25 liters for water for 1 liter of wine produced.
Yeah.
That's the consumption that is agreed basically by European as to produce. It's staggering. It's mind-blowing when you think about it. And obviously we all know water is a commodity as such. It's getting more and more and more expensive and less and less and less of it. So obviously, another cost, obviously energy in general. So fuel, electricity, because those wineries, even though some of them are solar panel, blah, 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 they can be sustainable. They're not entirely sustainability. There's also the carbon footprint that you pay a tax on it. So where I'm going with all those different costs, and then transport costs coming from the center of Spain to London. You ship it or you ship it by truck. There's a fuel cost, there's a driver cost, there's the road cost, because we all know, motorways in France are horribly expensive. And it's a factor that you have to put into perspective. And you do not import. I mean, importers work with what we call pallet. So pallet is 660 bottles. That's what it is. But a pallet, even the price of the wooden frame, the pallet, has risen by 400% nowadays. It's so expensive, you can't find them. And then you've got, on the top of that, what we call the duty in this country. So any given alcohol reaching the shores have to pay duty to the government.
Yeah.
It's £2.23 as today for a still bottle of wine below 14% of alcohol, between 9 and 14. Different value according to the alcohol level and the style. So still wine is that, and it's 2.36 for sparkling wine in general, wherever they come from. £2, £2.30. So you imagine that your bottle of wine costs you €5 in central Spain. By the time you get it to UK, in transport costs, in fuel costs, in tax costs, something that will already be roughly about £8. Roughly that's £8. And obviously you're the importer and you need to survive and pay your staff, your electricity, and so on and so forth. So that's a bottle of wine that, even though someone says it at €4.50 in Central Spain and costs them probably about €3 to produce altogether, and they make a bit of money, it almost doubles by the time it reaches our shore. So what's the difference between 10 and £100? Well, the thing is,
it comes down to the fixed costs mainly, isn't it?
The fixed cost is that, but then there's also the scarcity. Obviously, lately we all talk about champagne and Burgundy, and there's no Burgundy anymore because of very bad weather or 3 years in a row and so on and so forth. Yeah, and the price go up and up and up because they still have fixed costs that they need to protect, and also, well, they took over rather, but also they're also protecting, their interest, because their demand is still growing. So they're thinking, okay, I can put, 12, 10, 15, 20%, and my wine will still sell. There's greed associated to this. I'm not going to go into that because there's no point. But the scarcity makes it, the rarity makes it another aspect where, you think about the wines like Petrus. Okay, Petrus, it's not £100 anymore, it's £1,000 bottle of wine. This is another level. But Petrus is 11 hectares. That's basically the size of it.
And it's never gonna grow either. So
you can't. You call Petrus. The Petrus is your land. That's it. So whatever the weather, whatever your winemaking, whatever, you're going to produce that amount of wine for 7.5 billion people. I know not 7 billion people will be able to buy it or are interested, because there's cultural aspect where you don't really drink wine or whatever,
and financial as well.
But given or take, it's about 7 billion people potentially, or production of wine that is 20, 30, 40, 50,000 bottles. So obviously there's a massive pressure from the people that can drink it, that want to drink it, that want to invest in it, to get it. So that's why the price is rising. So where the difference is within all those elements. Obviously, you've got reputation. I mean, you think about wines like Tignanello, for example. So one of the first IGT coming from Tuscany, so from the Antinori family that comes from, it's a Chianti Classico, put it that way. It's a Chianti Classico, and then in 1971 they decided to get out of the appellation system of Chianti Classico and call it an IGT. Or at the time, the Gorialo 63. So IGT was really created in 1992. So it was a vino di tavola, a little bit like Sassicaia, a vino di tavola. So wine table wine. So completely declassified, didn't exist. You thought, even at the time, probably about £20, £25 for table wine. This is a joke. Nowadays, you got Vin de France or those kind of entry-level wines. That it's because the winemaker do not agree with the system, which there's an argument about it. What they think the system is not rigid enough as the quality of the ones they want to create and put on the market. So you find Vin France or wine of Spain, whatever, and those pricing are stupid. And you're thinking, what? £50 on £50 for something that has no regulation? No, it's actually no regulation. It's that there are more regulation, or because the land where the wine is produced is not within that area of encatchment. But it doesn't mean that that isn't good. Very often it's big names in the wine world that decided to go and cultivate this place because they're thinking this is actually, it's mind-blowing. It's great terroir, blah, 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 blah. So all those elements, as I was saying about Tianello, when I came to this country 25 years ago, you would pay 20, 22, 23 pounds with all the different taxes I just talked about. Even though taxes were less. And nowadays, Tianello, first of all, is only on allocation. So I get about 60 bottles a year for the business, which is nothing. I could sell that in 3 weeks. And I pay roughly 85 ex VAT, so about £100 a bottle nowadays. It's the same.
So that is what the business pays for it, and then
after that, obviously,
the margin. Let's not mention how much it costs for a customer.
Yes, and also in our guests, they're like, oh yeah, it's very expensive. Yeah, it's very expensive, but you have to also think that if you want to drink it, you drink gravity, because I only have 60. So you might go to the next restaurant, it might be more expensive or less restaurant, but they will probably have 24 or 36 for a complete year. And that's also create that scarcity, therefore that's price tags. So to come back to the point, 10 to 100, there's a lot of different factors, loads of different factors, obviously from whom, where you buy it, and so on and so forth. And obviously there is, the margin and what we call also the gray market. Nowadays you go to France, for example, you go to Italy, you go to Spain, you go to nice estates, you go to their shop or to the winery if they're not, big brand, whatever, and you ask the winemaker or the guy that that receive you, can I buy a case? And the person says, yeah, of course you can have 6 bottles, no problem, with pleasure. And you pay 15, 17, 18 or 10, 20 euros maximum. You ship it back, you drive it back, or you're lucky enough to put it back in your bag when you fly back. You come here and you look on one searcher and you're like, that's worth 6 times.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's a grey market, and the grey market is basically that fat cat, as we call them, in the middle. That because they have access to those wines and not everybody has, they sort of manipulate the price, and also the market. The market is completely crazy, because over the last 30 years, 25 to 30 years, wines have become, it's a commodity. It's an ego-based product as well, but it's a commodity. You got just people that collect it. Oh, I've got that, 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 and they would pay any silly money to get to it, and to have someone in their cellar. Doesn't mean they drink it. If they drink it, isn't better. But most of it is actually, it's an investment portfolio, and that's the scary part, because then those wines they become a Picasso that you put on your wall. At least a Picasso, you look at it.
Yes.
Most of the wines will have to be in your cellar, in a dark place where you don't even look at it. unless you have a beautiful cellar built in, which is also possible, and that could be a piece of art. But point being is most of wine is away somewhere that you don't actually have access really to it because it's an investment portfolio. So coming back to 10 to 100, there's many factors, but there is one factor that will not change, is that there's a massive difference with a wine that comes from anywhere in the world that you pay £10 for because there's its value on the market, and a wine that you will buy at £100 or in a shop or whatever, is because that production, or somewhere maybe there's someone making money, but that production usually is not especially 10 times better, but it means a location. It means, well, we know the word location. You know, you buy a house, if you buy well, you know, 6 years later, 10 years later, 15, whatever, you know, you took that massive margin. It's the same thing with some of the wines in the world, where those sites are recognized over the years and years and years. That winemaker is recognized over the years, and you will pay for that. It's like there's a lot of branding in wine, you know.
This is the important part you just mentioned. I think with the quality level of the juice, obviously, as we talked about it, there's a lot of factors which sort of skew the actual price of the wine, and there are fixed costs, there are sort of costs which go up and down depending on where the wine comes from, who makes it, and whatnot. But from a customer point of view, do you see, can obviously they can, but can customers enjoy a bottle of wine which costs £10 just as much as a bottle of wine which comes from £100 on the shelf, let's say?
Well,
where do you see the difference if you are a consumer?
To really to sort of give you a point of view is or to decipher that answer, I will take an analogy. The analogy is that you take your car, you know, your car you drive, and trust me, it's not an amazing car. And then beside of that, you have a Ferrari, Porsche, or one of those crazy top sport car. So you go around the circuit, whatever, with your car, and you do your timing, whatever. But it's your car. You don't really care. You can push a bit. Maybe you know how to drive, maybe you don't, whatever. And then you take that Ferrari and then you go around. You will probably go faster where you can go faster. Will you make a better time? I'm not quite sure. Will you potentially understand the entire car and use all its full potential? Well, I'm not quite sure. Unless you may be a real race car driver. For one, it's the same thing. You know, you will enjoy a bottle of £10. You will enjoy a bottle of £100. Will you use all the factors? Will you just, you know, be blown away by the quality because you have that understanding, or just you don't care? And you know, for you, it's a bottle of wine is a bottle of wine, and it has completely justified too. So there is a massive difference in certain aspects, and especially the capacity probably of aging. You know, if you buy a bottle of Pickpool at £7 in your supermarket, and it's a 2022 wine, and then you enjoy that with some oysters and friends on the terrace, whatever, it's perfect wine. £7. Don't get me wrong, £7 is a lot of money. And you're thinking, okay, fine, you know, a pleasurable value for money is there. I'm really pleased. And then next weekend you have a bottle of something that's got 20 years of bottle age. You know it's been kept correctly. You paid obviously very good money for it. You got people with you that are important to your eyes, that are friends, that understand wine or not, but that have cultivated and that have an interest. And you open that bottle of wine and you take what you can out of it. It might be very philosophical. The wine might show, might not show. It might be at the right time. You know, when we do the presentation with Perfect Cellar, I always talk about, you know, decanting, large glass, give it time to breathe, and so on and so forth. So all those parameters being taken in consideration, and that moment will be elevated by a lot of different factors: great food, obviously great wine and great company. And that moment, that bottle will remain in your mind by itself, but also the atmosphere around it. Maybe your friend will be like, I don't like it at all, it's terrible. And then that will still, stick to your mind, saying, oh, that bottle of wine, I paid so much money for it, and then nobody liked it. Or vice versa, like, wow, how do you get that? Amazing. And that will be like, oh, wow, it's already finished, and I don't have another one. So the value of the product is also given to what we make out of it. It's like a great restaurant. You go to a great restaurant and you spend, 100, 200, 200 pounds per person.
Yeah.
If you leave the restaurant and you look at your partner or your friend, you're like, wow, as a restaurateur, the guy as a chef, the guy has won. If oppositely you spend that money, you go out and you're thinking, what was that? Then as a restaurateur, as a chef, the place is lost, has lost it. And you will not go back. And probably you will just talk about it in a very negative way.
Yeah.
So the essence of wine value as a market has definitely a sense of place, a sense of production, a sense of maybe a rarity, as I said, cost due also to its shipping, to its distance, to again location. But more importantly, what you are after, what you're looking for, and what you get out of it. Eventually, what would you get out of it, and what do you expect? You can't really expect, as I said, with the car analogy, to have the same drive, even pleasure in driving, and maybe physical pleasure. If you do 1,000 kilometers with a very old car, you come to the place, you're exhausted. And vice versa. You do 1,000 kilometers in a very comfortable, super easy car. You arrive there, it's like having flew, across the world in business class. You're like, oh wow, let's do business.
Yeah. I know. It just for me, always the feeling is going back to the car analogy is actually quite good. What you mentioned, that you have your own car or whatever, which you drive on a daily basis or something, and then you have a Ferrari or a Porsche or whatever. Quite often, for some people, a Ferrari or a Porsche is a lot less comfortable than an average car. And that's what I mean in terms of wine as well. Some people would appreciate a 10-pound bottle of wine a lot more than a 100-pound bottle of wine, regardless of where they drink it, who they drink it with. They would just say like, okay, it's nice, but it didn't give me anything other than it's a bottle of wine. And sometimes people just say 10, 15-pound bottle of wine, and it was perfectly good on a perfect day. I think quite often it can deliver the same effect, if not bigger effect, if the value is right, I would say, because quite often you see very overpriced wines. Sometimes you see wines which are real bargains. Obviously, it's difficult to find, but if you find the right stuff at the right time, I think it's going to be.
It's not exactly. It's again the with whom are you going to share it? What's the angle? If it's a garden party, there's no need to open this 100-pound bottle of wine. There's no point, because that's not the point. The point is enjoying a garden, having some neighbors around and having chat and enjoying the sunshine and so on. And that wine needs to be quite chilled because it's quite warm, and you're going to drink it slowly, surely, or and probably more white and rosy than actually red. Some people will drink red, and again, the red we need to be a bit chilled. I did an event years ago where the aperitif was Dom Perignon Rosé. So staggering about the wine, but the person that offered to the weddings, to the wed couple, the champagne for their party and the aperitif, wanted it to be served at 4 Celsius. 4 Celsius. So I mean, drink something else. There's absolutely no point to drink such a champagne at 4 Celsius. Drink water. Drink water with a lot of ice. Same thing. You absolutely kill all the flavor profile.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they want. That's what they want. That's what they get. It doesn't matter. Yeah. But again, that's really saying that's there's so many angles according to what you're looking for, how double bottle of wines. Obviously what you can afford is part of it, but everyone, like, once in a lifetime, you say, you know what, it's my birthday, I've never driven a Ferrari and I will never drive one, and you rent one of those cars for a day, and then you go around the circuit, and if you're a petrol head, that's what people do, and it cost you, I don't know, 200, 300, 400 pounds. You're like, what, that's my birthday, let's do it. Some people will say, you know what, it's my birthday, I'm going to drink a very nice, rare and expensive bottle of wines, and so be it, and I do that every year. Or whatever, or whatever. I'll go to an expensive restaurant, or take a flight somewhere special and go to a spa. It doesn't matter. Point is that you can access that product and put it where you want. But more importantly, what do you get out of it? And at £10, you will get a lot of pleasure, because they give a lot of pleasure. It's a social product. £100, will it be 10 times better, 10 times bigger? That is the question.
Yeah.
And there's no answer to it. It's what do you make out of it?
I think it's a fascinating subject. I always ask people about. Obviously, when back in the days I was working in a physical environment where people purchase bottles, it's quite to sell a bottle of wine, you have to know what the person is looking for. You can't just sell a £100 bottle of wine to a person who is looking for £10, £15 bottle of wine. But I always try to gauge what the customer, what the person actually wants, because sometimes people think they want a £100 bottle of wine, but they really don't want it. They really don't need it. As you just mentioned, you're not going to crack open a £100 bottle of wine for a garden party, because there's no point. So you just have to put everything into place, and where it really belongs. And I think £10 bottle of wines do have a space, obviously, on the market, just as a £100 bottle of wine, or just as a £1,000 bottle of wine, regardless whether I can buy it or not. I don't think I can, but
That's done.
Yeah. But Christopher, thank you very much for your time, and hopefully on another call on another subject, and then
in very near future, indeed.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
for
very
listening.
And have a lovely work day.
Yes, another day, another back into it, big time.
Bye.
Thanks very much. Cheers. Bye bye.